So you might get hit with a little bit. Frank Fingerhooks, also AKA known as KTN, correct, sir?
Yeah, no
President.
one can pronounce it, so that's why I say KTN.
Exactly, yeah. You know, he's one of the biggest movers and shakers in this industry, and on the logistics side, we're grateful to have you as well, sir. Greg Havard, he is now leading up the Global Logistics Center of Excellence Center of Excellence for Nurgan Chemicals, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
That's good.
And he has a tremendous history in this area, including not only on the operations side, even on the technology side. So, and has even done some time in Halliburton, if I recall. Okay, Kevin. Why is Kevin here? You know, this was the first discussion we had. He's with Duff and Phelps. What's going to happen? Your CFO is going to talk to you about your problem with supply chain. Why the hell is these costs going through the damn air? What are we going to do about adjusting our EBITDA to solve this quarter's problems? Kevin deals with a lot of different chemical companies, resins companies and such, and I won't take anything more from him. And then we have Praveen. Okay, so this gentleman has shown, he's kind of, no, I'm going to say something a bit different here. He didn't come from automotive, did you? Yes, he did. So he came from automotive, I stand corrected, to teach oil and gas how to do supply chain. Now he's back at Toshiba, making some serious things happen. So congratulations on that new position for you. He's Vice President of Supply Chain there. With that, I'll let you get it going. Thanks, Kevin. Okay. So I need a chair somewhere. I'll get one. No, Kevin, maybe you can start off by telling us about what have you seen from other customers or in the industry, in particular, as to what's happening in this current environment, and you know, if there's recommendations or wherever you want to go with it, please go.
Well, I think from, let's say, a value perspective, I deal and I assist companies in identifying value and where value gaps are. I think a couple of things that's happening right now from a market participant perspective, from just general industry. On one side of the fence, you're having, you know, we have the current supply chain bottlenecks going on globally. The big question is, how long? When would that turn around? Some people, some participants and analysts are saying, well, okay, we think it's going to be second half 2022. On the outer end, we're even having people saying up to 2023. A lot of that is that sentiment is being driven by a couple things, especially on the US side of it, the limited driver availability still, and you have actually poor demographics with respect to that, replacing that workforce as they age. Chip shortages still impacting truck availability as the fleet ages and it churns, and then continuing labor shortage generally in it. We also have currently now with the new infrastructure bill, you know, the question mark, how much additional pressure that is going to put on existing demand, and I will segment it as industrial demand for basic goods and services that, you know, companies like Praveen and the rest of you, all the chemical suppliers are also looking for. You know, I'm replacing pipe, that's steel, aluminum for big box goods, etc., etc. And this is over and above that. And we're also looking at, you know, if there's a ramped up infrastructure spend, what's that going to do to core inflation for these things, and the end result being companies' bottom lines and earnings. My revenue might go up, but will my margins hold? And even before that, will I be able to grow that revenue sustainably? Do I have to take away projects? Do I have to, do all of that?
Right.
Yes. So,
So, wake everybody up. So, little different. So, thank you, Kevin. Because of all of this, right? Because of what's happening, I always think this is our time. This is the time for supply chain to shine, right? We always have a seat at the table, but I think we are probably the most sought after function in a company today, right? So what it has done for us is elevated our visibility to the whole organization. Now the question is, what do we do with that? A great chance for us to really do the things that we always wanted to do, which is drive change in the organization, right? A lot of partnership all the way through the whole organization, sales and marketing, forecasting. We talk about business intelligence in the chemicals distribution business. I mean, what is it? It's market intelligence. What can we get from the sales and marketing group? Earlier we used to go talk to them about forecast and just go away, we can never plan. Well, if you don't plan, we're not going to get you what you need to serve your customers, right? Great chance to start trying to change sales and marketing, forecast fees, lead time reductions, nearshoring, things that we always reduce waste to the whole organization, things we want to do all the time. Now's the time to do it. Now's the time to really start driving the change. So that's what I find really beautiful about the coming time. It's very stressful, don't get me wrong, but things change happens, never wasted time.
nice. No, and I think I can echo where Praveen was going with that, right? So I'm with Nurian, we're the specialty chemicals spinoff of Axo Nobel. It was spun off about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago. And we started standing up a centralized logistics hub 2 years ago. So the first year was a lot of planning, getting it all up and going, and everything was good. COVID was just starting to really break out, right, as we became operational. What we see happening now is, there's a lot of distributing information and, reports and kind of standard, quarterly reviews with the businesses and with our suppliers. So where he's going full circle now is the business wants to talk to us every day, all day long, from the commercial folks to the customer service folks to the finance folks. Everybody wants to know, where's my shipment? Where, how's my pipeline look? Tell me about this week, tell me about next week, tell me about the quarter. Just please help us understand what the heck's going on. So, we're engaged with the business more than I ever have been in my, more than 25 years in this business, right? And it is good, it's interesting, you learn a lot. The other things kind of that we have going on, kind of part of a spin-off, we kind of have 5 different organizations coming together, and they thought they talked to each other and they thought they understood all their practices and their processes. But in times like this, we run a war room for the last 2 months, right? Where I sit in with some of my key team members and we let the people come in, call in. They're coming in with things nobody ever thought of, right? That was really going on in the background that we have to get worked out immediately because we got to get capacity, we got to get the carriers in line with it. We got to get the new rail rates as fast as we can. We have to get all the, steamship line arrangements ASAP that we didn't even think we needed. So stuff like that is going on in our organization.
Well, let me, I'm Frank Vingerhoed, so I run the Katunasi operation in the NAFTA area, and we're actually, let's say, on the operational side. We manage about 6 million square foot of warehouses here in Houston, and we have about 9 million square foot of warehouses in the US. It's a challenging environment, to say the least, right now. So every year we make a budget. Last year, September in 2020, we make a budget for 2021. Well, I can tell you, our budget was completely wrong. We did not know. Everybody thought we knew it was coming. I'm sure you all heard about the the shale boom and all the petrochemical plants being built, polyethylene going to be shipped out, PVC going to be shipped out. Well, last year that we had that hurricane, the West Lake or in Lake Charles, everything went down. We start to recover in December last year, and in February we had the famous freeze, area or Uri, how they called it. But instead of we unload rail cars with resin, and our goal or the plan was to do about 2,500 rail cars a month in the, let's say, the Gulf Coast. Well, we went from 2,000 cars or 2,200 cars in January to about 800 in March. That's half of what we did there. Which means, okay, the warehouse get empty, and you hear full warehouses everywhere. But just to, why am I saying all this? So our warehouses are empty. Now, we're a global company, and we work with different companies all over the world. Now, during that time, a customer of us in Europe asked us, hey, can you store 2,000-3,000 pallets for us in March? Yeah, sure. We have plenty of space. We've got 6 million square foot. Why not? Well, right now we have 52,000 pallets for that same customer who never predicted it, who doesn't know what's going to happen with it. My point is, nobody in the supply chain right now has an idea, and I'm talking about a company, global company, very reputable. Nobody has a handle on it right now. And that's where you see this big disruption, and everything in time, on-time delivery, just in time. Well, once it screws up, it gets really bad. And I think a lot of us see it. And now we have these 52,000 pallets, and now our other business is picking up again. So now we might run out of space, although we have a lot of space. But just to say, for me, it's an incredibly challenging environment we live in. I hope things change because I can talk for hours on the practical side. To be honest, we operate also in Dallas, for example. Well, so the ports opened, or our president said, okay, the ports in LA Long Beach need to be open 24/7. Well, UP stopped for a week running their train between Dallas and LA, but which has an enormous effect on our business in Dallas. So I mean, and it just doesn't stop right now. So we're professionals. We're doing the best we can, but it's a very tough environment we're all living in right now. So, but I just sign off from a practical point of view. So.
Thanks, man. I think on my side, I'll agree with everyone. Everybody in supply chain has gone through the same problems we have discussed over and over: container problems, chassis problem, vessel delays, and me and Frank had time to go on lunch because it was so slow on our side.
Yeah.
So thanks to that. But in my experience in the last 1.5 years, what we have seen in the supply chain, that you have to expect the unexpected every day. There's not a day when you can wake up and say, hey, today is going to be a normal day. Something is going to get wrong, or something will need your attention immediately, because the customer is either shouting at you or at your team, or vessel has not picked up your container, or there's a congestion on Long Beach, or something like that. So historically, we have always planned for crisis management, and we eliminated, let's say, 10% of the items because the probability of those events happening is so low, it doesn't make any sense to think on that. But in the last 2 years, what has happened, which everybody knows, we are planning for every unprecedented event which you can think of. If in Gulf Coast, you always plan for hurricane, storm, but now you plan for freezer, literally. You plan for water shortage, you plan for flooding, you plan for anything and everything which can come to you. And I can tell you a story about last year, because everybody heard enough about logistics problem. But there's one area where I think we can improve quickly is digitization, which we heard a little bit in the last panel. So this is a true case study. Last year when COVID started, we had a shipment going from Middle East to Asia on a letter of credit. So the cargo shipped and it was on its way to Asia, or country in Asia. And at that time, the COVID hit. So what happened? Many countries, they closed their ports are in and out. Banks closed their offices, they're working from home. So during that time, we received the documents from our producer, bill of lading, which was in Houston. So now our job was to prepare the documents, send it to our bank in New York. We will do the letter of credit transaction. And when we spoke to the bank in New York, they were closed. What do we do? Where do we send the document? Finally, we said, okay, one of the employees of the bank agreed to accept the document at their home after getting approval from the managers, which worked out fine. We said, okay, send it to the employee's home. But then the opening bank in Asia was also closed. So they said, we can't take any document. And same thing we said, can we send it to your home? And they were kind enough to accept it. They said, okay, this is my address, send it to us. Then we went to the courier company, FedEx or DHL, one of them. They have stopped their services to that country. So even if the banks have agreed to accept it, nobody can take it, nobody can fly. In a typical situation, I can have someone just hop on a plane and deliver the car package if needed. That's not ideal, of course. But the couriers were closed. So in the whole supply chain cycle, we found out that we have everything, but we still cannot deliver the documents to a country, to a bank in Asia, and the cargo arrived at the port. And the car was incurring detention, damage for days and months. It would have, it did not. So we found a solution of sending the electronic document. Basically, we scanned the documents to the bank here. They scanned the document to the bank in Asia. The shipping line agreed to release the cargo on LOI without production of the original bill of lading. But it took us a huge amount of time, 7, 8, 10 days just to coordinate back and forth, talk to banks, talk to the shipping line, talk to the broker, talk to the custom agent. And the entire process could have been simplified by just using digitized documents. So I'm personally working with some blockchain initiatives, some other just electronic initiatives also. And this is something which I believe if as an industry we work, we can definitely eliminate one of the hassles. We cannot do much about the shipping delays till new vessels or new containers are brought in sometime in 2023, which we all know the orders are here.
Sorry, quick question. So fascinated to hear this coming from IT domain. So is this a legacy issue in your industry that you guys still have to have a lot of paper-driven trails?
Yes. It's not the industry, it's the letter of credit banking UCP requirement.
External forces that are driving you to do this. Yes.
Yes, because in many countries, you don't want to take the credit risk, right? So if you are selling into a country where you don't have a lot of credit insurance, you will demand a letter of credit to guarantee payment for your good.
And they have to see the stamp or whatever it is in local.
Not necessarily, but the bill of lading is definitely something which they need in original. So you can still scan all the documents, your invoice, packing list, certificate of origin, whatever documents they need. But the bill of lading is still something which they need original, non-negotiable, negotiable copies. So that's the bottleneck. And there are solutions to digitize the bill of lading, but the adoption is very small, very low.
That's the problem.
That's the
We just got the e-airway bill and they're still rolling that out. So once you can move from e-airway bill to a digital blockchain to a digital packing list, commercial invoice. I mean, I was a freight forwarder for 30 years. It's too big.
Yes, and you're talking about thousands of banks. It's not only one bank.
But once you get universal adoption, you could run a shipment without ever having to touch a piece of paper.
Yes, absolutely.
Again, it would be probably wonderful for DHL, FedEx, and UPS because it would lighten up their load and then they can deliver on those packages. And not have to worry about documenting. Again, it would be a fundamental shift for them as well. And for the whole world.
It will be a shift for the banks. The trade finance can benefit a lot from digitization because they can just fund the transaction without going through the whole process of looking at every document. Everything is confirmed by 200 people already. The trucker, the shipping line, the customs, the ports, the customer opening bank, negotiating bank, confirming bank. You have blockchain confirmation from 20 people, right? So it's a huge benefit to everyone. The time, transit time, documents are lost in courier. The average cost of a document lost is at least $30,000-$40,000, depending on at what port it is. The containers are.
I think that would evolve from telex to fax to email to EDI. Now, we need to move blockchain across our whole industry, across our whole thought process.
Absolutely.
Really.
So that's one of the case study, a real case study which we went through, and the solutions are there. We just have to add more and more counterparties to the same solution and just make it work. Yes.
Just real quick, did y'all ever implement any document understanding with the AI base that ships that? So it'll go in and actually read the language for you and then populate it for other areas?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
It's I didn't know if y'all had any document understanding at all, but it doesn't sound like it.
No, we don't have anything like that.
Okay.
We do have a process of verifying our documents electronically, but there's no AI built into that right now.
Okay.
That's all from me. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want the mic back?
Oh, why not? So to that point, I mean, paper is just an enormous headache, and I mean, I think we're all getting old enough and tired of this. We got to get rid of the paper. It's the freight forwarding industry needs to evaporate it, and I can't remember the last time nobody wanted to keep it. I can remember doing contracts in Russia, and we have to file everything in paper, and you have to ship everything over stamped, and we have about that much stack every time we do a bill, right? An invoice. Wasn't even shipping anything for that matter. Now, on the trucking side, I had an interesting conversation last week, and they were moving electronics, and this Amazon trucking operation says, we're done. If you don't have EDI, or excuse me, if you have EDI, we will not take your load. If it's not API, is the only way we'll do it. So welcome to this new supply chain issue, forcing anybody dealing with the trucking firms, and they're commanding this because they got 40% premium going in the spot market, right? So I'm not here to pick on trucking organizations at all. Nobody wants to give you more capacity other than what's in your contract. Everything else is going to go to spot. So, this gets back to collaboration. Cousin Eddie, Uncle Tom, whoever, save us. We need help. That's one example. The second one I kept hearing of, is there a better forecasting finally getting underway for any of you gentlemen as it relates to the use of rail? I heard so much going on constant, well, we're not even using rail cars. We're just going to use truck. We can't get a hold of the forecast. Who's got a forecast? They tell you got a forecast, they're full of forecasting. Right? So I'm hoping that maybe you can shed some good light here. But I was just wondering if anybody was able to get better forecasting, get more. How are you dealing with lack of capacity issues?
I can take a real question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think from forecasting or how we're dealing, I mean, our rail business really hasn't let up, right? Because we're just still shipping specialty chems to everybody. What we've been able to harness is our rail TMS, right? And the couple of rail TMSs out there, they all do it.
Right.
But we can take that, and over the course of a year or two, it keeps track of all the data, it keeps track of all the terms. Then you meet with the business quarterly, we get their semi-forecast. To your point, though, they're not as accurate as they used to be, but they can give us indications. They know, upcoming business they're going to get for next year. We can put that in the tools and the modeling parts of the rail TMS system, and it spits out a pretty good picture of your fleet size, right?
Right.
It comes back and it tells you, okay, you have 500 cars in this fleet now, based upon what's going on this year, what you're forecasting, you better start looking for 100 cars, right?
Right.
And it takes us through all of our different business lines, and we can do that. So there's hope out there it does exist on the rail side with some of the better rail TMSs. So we're stood up with a rail TMS, and we're stood up with a truck and an import-export TMS. So that one helps us with that.
I think maybe I will talk a little bit about the trucking. So we also run a trucking company.
Right.
So we have right now 60 our own trucks because we were not in trucking. Our customer said, "Hey, KTM, you do a lot of trucking in Europe. Why don't you do it in the US?" Said, "Okay, well." So we get a contract. We're serious people. We say, "Yeah, that's what we'll do." Well, guess what? We have 60 trucks and we have 40 running and 20 sitting in the yard because we can't find drivers.
Right.
So we have increased our salaries to our guys with 20%. Guess
Right.
what? Can't find drivers.
Right.
So what's the solution there? I mean, so we're sticking to our contract with our customer because we're a serious company. Now, everybody, like you said, is pop business. They charge the Port of Houston right now. It's a long wait times. People charge $195 more per load, I believe, for waiting. We're not doing this. But so we're not finding truckers and we're keeping our rate, but actually we're right now losing money. So it's rough out there and you can't find drivers. And a dray truck driver, you would think that's a great job, right? I mean, 5 days a week, you work as many hours as you want, you work whenever more as you want, but we can't find it. So it's not easy out there. So I understand your frustration because a lot of trucking companies, earlier they were talking about the mom and pop shops, the insurance and all that kind of stuff. They have an accident, they go away. We don't do that, but it's out there. The owner operators, right now it looks like they're putting their foot down. They're all starting to charge more. I'm not sure if that's correct or not. I haven't seen it myself, but that's what I hear. So it's a challenge. Now, with regards to rail forecasting, we receive a lot of rail cars, and there are programs out there that predict when the rail cars are coming. So ETAs and all that, that's something that you can predict, and it's within rail reason, let's say, but
Right.
5 to 10 days difference, don't count that, but you will get it within 5 to 10 days normally. Right? So, that's just two of your questions. And he says you can talk about trucking also, because he uses them a lot too.
All right. So it's the same thing as Brian said, but on the rail car, I have seen much worse. So right now, I think it's still manageable. 5 days delays or 5 days of, days here and there is not a bad thing. I have seen much worse 2-3 years back and back in 2008, 9. We have seen months of delays actually, 30 days of delays. So I'll say still under control. On the trucking side, I'll say, coming back to your forecast thing, we can have an annual forecast, but the supply chain has been so transactional nowadays that we are doing very short-term forecasts, 1 month, 2 months. What do we see in 2 months from now? How many containers we need, how many trucks we need, how many chassis we need. And we plan for them with our partners with very precise numbers, by days and by week. Not that I need 500 containers next week. We will tell them on this day I will need 100, next day I need 60. And so it's much more precise, short-term forecast, which will help supply chain to meet the long-term goals. Right. But those one annual planning, 2-year planning is all thrown away because you really have no control on that. So that's how we are operating right now.
Frank, what's wrong with you? You're being too kind, you're not overcharging, I don't understand this issue. I mean, you know, everybody would be calling you right now.
I know, but we have no capacity. We have no drivers.
Right, right. Well, I mean, we heard from William this morning on US Auto. I mean, there's your competition. When you hear somebody sitting at this table and they're paying a high price to their drivers, doing every single thing, there's nothing to compete against. You can the only thing you can do is make their family life better. That is the only thing I can come up with once you get to a certain pay scale, right?
Yeah.
So I have,
The only.
Where's the limit there?
I have a
Go ahead,
question. So I've heard you talking about within the four walls of your enterprise, this is how you plan, these are the shortages, these are the realities of COVID. What is it you're doing, reaching outside of your enterprise, collaborating with people that are in the same industry so that you can find capacity and share capacity, let's say on rail? You know, hey, look, I lost 3 containers this week, we're not gonna be able to fill them, you can have them. Is that type of collaboration across your industry, is that happening at all?
We're starting to see some of it, right? And driven by our procurement people, they are reaching out to some of our, you know, maybe not competitors, but peers. We're talking with Baker Hughes, I know. We're talking with, I forget the other one, but I've heard of that with us so far. We haven't done it from a logistics standpoint. It's probably a good idea. So no. The other thing with trucking, and I'll pass it back to, is we, you know, in these times too, the other kind of trick, right? You got to go to dedicated, right? We quickly made the decisions in the spring. We weren't getting capacity. So we started little by little. It wasn't easy, but with some of our core carriers and the people that we know, we implemented a couple of dedicated fleets. To your point, you take 5, 6 drivers here, 10 drivers there. You put them on a guaranteed pay rate, and then they have a nice life. They have a good week, regardless of what happens. Right? So we had to go to that. It's got to be careful with the costs. We got to keep them in check and make sure you're using them. We take care of that. We've even gone. One of our dedicated trucking companies never did drayage. We put them on a drayage model because we had to use it to get in and out of the ports of New Orleans and Mobile. So things inventive ideas like that too. You take a dedicated trucker that, this is a bulk trucker who's never done ISO tanks or containers, and we converted them over the course of the last 2-3 months. Literally 5 guys just doing dedicated runs with, leased chassis and running containers in and out of 2 of our plants to the port. So, whatever it takes.
Yeah, that's some good news.
Yeah, Rick, it's interesting you asked this question, right? I mean, I'm seeing a lot more collaboration within our company and beyond the walls. And one example that just comes to mind when you asked the question was there's a huge run on electrical steel, which is a huge commodity for us. It's funny, I happen to know the CPO of a major elevator company. So we were talking one day, and he's like, Praveen, I just cannot get this particular grade of electrical steel. I said, guess what, Chris? We have some of that. Right? So ended up that, we actually had a little bit of extra to spare because he had a temporary short-term need. He was going to get some, but it's going to take a month for him to get that. I said, we can probably get you some steel, or send you some steel. And I was just thinking, what are the chances this kind of collaboration would have happened a year ago? 0, right? A lot of that is happening across the industry, right? Even forecasting, we source a lot of our motors from Vietnam, and Vietnam was, as all we know, shut down for the last 3 months. So, but what happened is we knew they were opening up because we're so close to our sales folks, Vietnam factory. A month and a half before they opened up, we lined up the containers for the product when it's made to be shipped, right? And all that happens because of the collaboration, connecting with sales, connecting with the factory, planning ahead, right? I see a lot of that going on right now. So yeah, we don't have any examples of sharing rail capacity or ocean container capacity, but this is real-time example that happened 2 weeks ago. So, yeah. So I'm seeing a lot of that happen.
One thing on the longer term or medium to longer term end of things that I've seen with a number of my clients come up from a forecasting and planning perspective is just like what they said earlier, just in time kind of went out the window. You reacted, you were just planning week to week, month to month ahead. But one thing that the pandemic actually brought to the fore was, we moved towards globalization, a more integrated world. You ran up to scale in a jurisdiction or two where you could source materials. Now people are going back to think, okay, how much buffer stock do I need? Be it raw material, or intermediate product. That ties up cash, right? However, you're saying, well, okay, it's the balancing act. I need material. I can't afford to go offline because I lose money if a factory goes down. Opportunity costs lost. A good point, a good case in point, Toyota had enough chips to keep on producing while the others went down. Probably nobody could have foreseen it, but they just had extra and they were able to continue producing. What we're seeing also now is aligned with that is looking at supply chain management going one level up in terms of strategic sourcing. Where do I get X and Y raw materials from? Do we need to consider alternate locations? Like Sanjan was mentioning earlier, we have to plan for floods, we have to plan for this, that, and the other. Is it all coming from China, or do we need to put something in Indonesia or Thailand, et cetera, et cetera? And that plays into, I think, some of the discussions that would come out of just the pandemic and the crush that you're having in the supply chain.
So we also know that there's, you had massive swings in the commodity prices, right? Which creates its own additional stress. Now we have, as we started this morning, the bullwhip factor that's being driven by the consumer and everybody trying to catch up with demand. That has got to play a really tough balancing act in the commodities world right now. And I don't even begin to have the answer other than you want to be long a tremendous amount of inventory unless you're a manufacturer, blow it out as fast as possible to get the pricing. So, have you had to put in hedging? What are some of the areas here that you can just touch on?
Yeah, good question. It's a very, you need to put a lot of thought into a lot of this stuff because we are struggling with the same thing for many of the commodities we buy, right? So steel and copper and other things, right? So what we have decided to do is I think most companies do this. We hedge a portion of our spend because we got to protect our supply and also protect the cost. Electrical steel or for most steel, I'm told is sold out for next year. I don't know how far that's true or not, right? So what we ended up essentially doing is hedging about 60%. So we committed to 60% of spend next year at a particular cost or price, right? And then we let the other 40% float. I mean, that's the best we can do, right? Because, so that's why strategic sourcing has taken on such an importance in these. We always talk about logistics, but strategic sourcing is equally or even more important because it has very real ramifications for the bottom line of the company, right? Because when we do our quarterly earnings and then we got to report all the way up, I mean, sourcing is a big piece of, hey, what do you think commodities will do next quarter and the next quarter, right? And then what we say is what goes upstairs and gets broadcast. So along with the logistics, I think sourcing is taken on a very outsized role in the current environment. It just demands a very thoughtful approach. You need to understand your commodities, you understand your needs, and take a very prudent approach to how to navigate through all this. So, yeah.
maybe I'll quickly talk about the wood price and pallets. Those prices, well, overnight they just doubled. So some of our customers, we provide pallet prices, and we had pricing fixed for, say, a quarter. It used to be even a year, because prices wouldn't fluctuate that much. Well, guess what? Now we've had to change our contract to a monthly, because you just can't keep up. Now it's come back down, but it's gone. It was just crazy. The same with we supply and we package polymers, but they're also covered in a big polymer bag. Let's say that covers the pallet, right? It's literally the price doubled overnight. Well, it went from you says your nose from $1,000 a ton to $2,000 a ton, but it was all inclusive pricing. So I mean, it has changed the world, I believe, and it will continue to. So we just need to be much more reactive and be on a monthly basis instead of what we used to do.
Right.
People. Sage has probably the same issue, so.
It's the same issue as what I'm trying to say, is that, we're not an expert in lumber.
Right.
So if you want to hedge the pallet, you need to know what is your expected volume for the next 6 months or 1 year, which you don't know. So the petrochemical industry, unfortunately, wants everyone to have flexibility, which is quite unrealistic. As Frank said, that you have 9 million square feet of space, and you may have commitment for 5 million, but the actual fulfillment or the throughput may be only 2 million.
Right.
So you really don't have a good planning for hedging. You may end up losing a lot of money, because what happens with lumber price from $1,700 to $600 again, or $700? It's just speculation. So it depends on industry to industry, whether hedging is the right tool or not. I think we're running out of time now.
Well, with that, let's get on to the awards. We have no time for any more questions. I want to thank you guys. It was absolutely very insightful. There's no question about it. I don't envy you in certain of these areas, and particularly where the commodity prices have risen so high, and really you're putting capital at risk. We both know that, and at the same time you have this little thing called supply chain going on. So God bless you all in your endeavors, and thank you so much for coming out today. Let's give them a round of applause. And okay, I don't know how I happened to get this in order. Kevin, Global Chemical Transaction Leader of the Year. That's what a finance guy does, isn't it? Yes, exactly. The Automotive Digital Supply Chain Executive of the Year. Glad you're actually. Frank, I don't know how you do it. I think we got to get some Marines down there for drivers, help you out. Global Logistics Chemical Provider of the Year. Thank you, Frank. Sajid, Global Chemical Business Intelligence Leader of the Year. Thank you. You're welcome. And not last but not least, Greg, Global Chemical Logistics Executive of the Year. Thank you very much.